some of these children went through horrific personal experiences, and they ought to be compensated for that.
Tonight, a class action suit against a BC social worker accused of stealing money from kids. Now the British Columbia government responds to those allegations.
And after 40 years of fighting, the Lubicon First Nation finally signs a land deal with Ottawa and Alberta.
Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward.
And I'm Melissa Ridgen. A Manitoba family is in mourning after a shooting in Winnipeg took the life of a 17-year-old boy. Family have identified the victim as Christopher Dwight Bolio McIver, otherwise known as Teddy.
McIver was living in Winnipeg at the time, but was originally from Sandy Bay and Ebb and Flow First Nations. Police were called to a home in Winnipeg's West End early Saturday morning and found the victim suffering from a gunshot wound. He later died in hospital. A 15-year-old boy has been charged with manslaughter in connection to the killing. A vigil is taking place Tuesday night outside the home.
These two youths were known to each other and were engaged both had agreed to be together, so this wasn't a targeted shooting or an act of, we don't believe it was an act of aggression, and you can tell by the charge here it's manslaughter and discharge firearm in a reckless manner. You can sort of put together the backstory here beyond what I could probably tell you.
Last week, we told you about a class action lawsuit filed against the British Columbia Ministry of Child and Family Development. One of their employees was alleged to have been stealing money intended for children in his care. The ministry has now responded to those allegations. Here's APTN's Tina House.
It's alleged that Robert Riley Saunders opened joint bank accounts with kids in his care who were receiving independent living funding, transferring those funds to his own personal bank account. Lawyer Jason Grattel now represents many of those children that were involved.
We know that Saunders had a caseload of 90 children in the past few years. We don't know exactly how many of them were exploited. We don't know how many of them were defrauded or of how much. We do know that there are approximately 24 serious cases, and the remainder of his caseload is being investigated supposedly by the Ministry of Child and Family Development.
And in this press release sent out late on Friday, November the 9th, just before the long weekend, the Ministry of Child and Family Development states the timeline of events. In December of 2017, the ministry was notified of financial irregularities and notified the Comptroller General. In January of 2018, the ministry took steps to ensure the safety and well-being of the children affected. The Office of the Comptroller General launched an investigation. In March of 2018, the Office of the Provincial Director of Child Welfare launched a review and interviewed the children involved. Reports were then shared with BC's representative for children and youth. Robert Riley Saunders was fired from his position. However, in that press release, they do not say if police were also notified. A class action lawsuit was filed on November the 6th, 2018, against the Ministry of Child and Family Development, the Interior Savings Bank, and Robert Riley Saunders. Lawyer Jason Grattel wants to immediately implement an entitlements package for each child affected so that their well-being is taken care of.
Secondly, we're seeking restitution of the amounts taken. Thirdly, we're seeking compensation for the harms resulting from being defrauded of especially shelter allowances. That is, some of these children went through horrific personal experiences, and they ought to be compensated for that. And then lastly, there's a punitive damages element that if the Ministry of Child and Family Development, if Riley Saunders, and if Interior Savings is not going to be held accountable through the criminal system, then the civil system should make sure that punitive damages are awarded.
None of these allegations have been proven in court. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Violence in Thunder Bay has First Nations worried for people's safety once again. The city has had 3 homicides in the past 12 days. Police have pressed charges in 2 of those investigations. The latest homicide occurred Sunday in the city's south side. Police said they responded to reports of possible gunfire. When they arrived to the residence, they found a man with serious injuries. He died shortly afterwards. The 35-year-old victim has been identified as Jeffrey Corbell in what police say was a targeted incident. Police say public safety is not a concern and they continue to investigate. Anishinaabe Nation Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler reassured the chiefs in assembly that student safety remains a priority.
Especially in the last little while with acts of violence and homicides in the city, I think it's just again increasing concern for the safety and well-being of especially our students that go to school here in Thunder Bay, and the need to ensure that the recommendations that were made by the 7 Youth Inquest are fully implemented quickly, and that we need to ensure that there's facilities, that there's safe spaces for our students here in Thunder Bay.
The Quebec inquiry into relations with Indigenous peoples has landed in Kujjuarapik. The inquiry will spend its 35th week mainly hearing testimony from the Inuit of Nunavik. One topic that's expected to repeatedly surface over the next few days, Inuit relations with their own police force. Tom Fenario has the story.
I welcome you to my town.
This is the Quebec Inquiry's first day of public hearings in Kujjuarapik. The remote community of 750, located on the eastern shores of Hudson Bay, will host about 24 testimonies this week. Inquiry Commissioner Jacques Vien commends the courage of all those who choose to testify.
It's not always easy to come before a commission or with councils all around and to relate matters that in many cases were very difficult to live. In some cases, it's like opening wounds that were not cured yet.
51-year-old Perti Tokoluk of Amukjuak was the first to testify. In December of 2017, his second cousin, David Sapa, was killed by police.
It's as if the only training that the police force get is how to shoot.
The Nunavik region of subarctic Quebec is the ancestral home of about 12,000 Inuit. The Kujjuarapik Regional Police Force enforces the law here. They also kill or seriously injure people at 55 times the rate of Montreal police. But Tokoluk doesn't just blame them for his second cousin's death. He says his cousin used false employment information to get an early release from prison, and that if corrections had called to verify this, his cousin would still be in jail and therefore still alive.
Nobody likes to say of a family member he should have been incarcerated, he should have been in jail. No, it's hard to say that. But when it comes to the point of a loss of life, when those preventable measures could have been taken, it's maddening.
Tuesday, the inquiry will hear from 5 testimonies regarding the justice and correctional systems, as well as more on the Kujjuarapik Police Force. Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Kujjuarapik, Quebec.
What to do with an increase in polar bears?
We'll have that story after the break, but first, here's a look at what's coming up on Face to Face tonight right after the news. Our guest is Senator Kim Pate, who has been calling for changes in Canada's prison system.
When you create environments where people are increasingly less equal and more marginalized, then you create a situation where, as we've seen with Indigenous women in particular, more likely to go missing, be disappeared, be found murdered, end up on the street, end up in prison. And so the very same issues that have contributed to women not having equal opportunities to live, thrive, and be in society are part of what's contributed to them being overrepresented in prisons.
On the East Coast, we've got -8 and rain in Fredericton, 10 in St. John's. Kujjuarapik is -9 with some sun and cloud. Same with Kujjuarapik. Nain is -3, mix of sun and cloud. Chibougamau is -10 and snow. Saguenay -7 and snow. Montreal -6 and sunshine. Sarnia and Windsor in 0 with mostly sunny skies. Ottawa -5. Sault Ste. Marie snow and -3. Big Trout Lakes -11 and snow. -1 in Thunder Bay with mostly sunny skies. minus 11 snow in Thompson. Pucktawakan snowing and minus 10. Minus 4s for Barons River and Princess Harbor, and snow 0 and rain in Winnipeg. Lots of sun in southern Saskatchewan. Saskatoon is 5 and sunny, same with Regina, 4 in Estevan. The sunshine and 3 in Buffalo Narrows, cloudy in La Ronge and 3, and snowing and minus 9 in Uranium City.
Welcome back. A signing ceremony in northern Alberta today marks the beginning of recognition for the Lubicon First Nation. Lubicon were missed in treaty negotiations in the late 1800s and fought for 40 years for a land settlement that would bring much-needed housing, better education, and health care. Today, dignitaries from the federal and Alberta governments were in Little Buffalo, located in Alberta's Peace River region, as Chief Billy Joe Lubicon officially signed off on the deal. The claim offers $113 million from the provincial and federal governments, as well as 246 square kilometers of land near the community of Little Buffalo. And we'll have more on the historic signing and what the deal means for Lubicon First Nation on tomorrow's newscast.
A father from the Sunchild First Nation says regulations need to change when it comes to drilling and flaring near a residence. Darcy Goodrunning's home is just 700 meters from a drill site in Alberta. He says the 24-hour noise keeps his family awake all night, and now the flaring is making life even worse. Tamara Pimentel has this story.
This is what it sounds like on the Sunchild First Nation as a gas flare spews into the sky. It's part of a drilling and flaring operation that is taking place on the backyard of the reserve.
There you could see.
And it's too close to home for Darcy Goodrunning. It's hard to see the flare from his home during the day, but at night, this is how bright it is.
We experienced the noise all night long, where it was like 1 o'clock in the morning when they're flaring outside. It looks like it's daylight outside. Today I experienced daylight outside at night. And so much to the point where it kicks out my yard light, telling my yard light it's daytime.
Goodrunning says drilling started taking place about a month ago. The activity so loud his house would vibrate, his children would lose sleep, and teachers would notify Goodrunning about his daughter falling asleep in class. The drilling is over, but now the flaring has begun, and Goodrunning received this notice from 555 Intercontinental Group 2 days before flaring started on November 3rd. Goodrunning's home is 717 meters away from the site.
That is way too close, way too close.
He says he contacted 555 and received no help. According to the Alberta Energy Regulator, drilling activity must be at least 100 meters from a residence. Goodrunning says that distance should be expanded. APTN reached out to 555. They say they have followed protocols and have no further comment. And we were unable to reach a spokesperson for the Sunchild First Nation.
For a well site or a drilling rig to come and invade your space, for my family to be disrupted, for myself to be disrupted, I don't know what to say. I don't know who to turn to. I don't know who to ask for help.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News on the Sunchild First Nation.
The Winnipeg School Division today announced a first-of-its-kind program in Canada aimed at developing more Indigenous teachers. The Build From Within program will serve 60 high school students over the next 2 years. Those in the program can earn their educational assistant diploma while finishing high school. Those students can then work part-time as educational assistants for the school division while earning their education degrees from the University of Winnipeg. Ayla Laforte is one of the students selected for this program.
But it's just a great feeling to know that I was chosen, and also it's just a great opportunity to explore my Indigenous path and to have more Indigenous people in our schools and to have that representation that sometimes we don't really have here.
A state funeral service was held for former Quebec Premier Bernard Landry today. 100 gathered at Montreal's Notre Dame Basilica to pay their respects. Landry died last week at age 81 years old. He's remembered for negotiating a historic development agreement with Cree nations in Quebec called La Paix de Brave. Grand Chief Abel Bossum of the Grand Council of Crees was there to pay tribute.
I think the fact that Mr. Landry and his government opened up to discussions on sharing resources, sharing revenues from resources that are extracted from the territory, and also establishing peaceful relationships through high-level discussions, these are sort of some of the ingredients of the agreement that we have, and so he certainly has paved the way, for our province and its relationship with Aboriginal people.
Time for another quick break, but stick around, there's more to come.
But first, here's a look at the rest of Wednesday's weather forecast. To northern Alberta, we've got -7 in snow and high levels, 0 in Peace River. 6s for Red Deer and Edmonton, mostly sunny skies, 10 and sunny in Calgary. 11 and rain in Campbell River, 13 and rain in Tofino. Dease Lake is 0 and a mix of snow and rain. -13 and snow in Dawson City, 0 and snow in Whitehorse. -11 and snow in Norman Wells. Wrigley's -12 and snow, as is Fort Simpson. -27 but sunny in Tuck, -21 in Inuvik. -26 in Cambridge Bay, -29 in Baker Lake, -26 in Chesterfield, lots of sun there. Igloolik is -21 and sunny, -23 and sunny in Clyde River, and -13 and sunny in Cape Dorset. Welcome back. Dennis Franklin Cromarty High School in Thunder Bay honored First Nations veterans last week. Willow Fiddler was there.
When we refer to the veterans in the language, we call them Ogichita. And Ogichita means, the English rough translation is warrior, but in our language, the deeper meaning means the big-hearted one with the big heart. And they truly do have big hearts.
David Thompson is the land-based education coordinator at Dennis Franklin Cromarty High School. He served in the military when he was younger and wants students to feel connected to First Nations veterans.
Yeah, the wall of remembrance that you see here is a display of First Nation veterans from First World War, Second World War, Korea, and other theaters of service. When they signed up, most of them were just young boys, as you can see. They're just kids like the kids in the high school here. A lot of these young people were straight out of residential school. They went into the Army, the Air Force, the Navy. They said, coming out of residential school, going through basic training was nothing, because, they had already endured some pretty hardships, going to residential school.
More than 7,000 First Nations people fought in World Wars I and II and the Korean War.
Well, first, when they joined, they're treated as equals. They're proud to wear those uniforms, and they put their lives on the line, for in defense of Canada when Canada, the Crown, needed them. But they themselves experienced a lot of hardship coming back after their service.
Many First Nations veterans were enfranchised when they enlisted, losing rights like their Indian status.
To come back to their own land, their own homelands, to face the very things that they fought against.
Today they are honored for their contributions, but Thompson said veterans should be remembered all year round.
At powwows, veterans are held in high regard, high esteem, and there's a special dance, special song for them. And by seeing death on the battlefield, the veterans truly know the sacredness of life. And what these young people did in their time was very brave, honorable, and dedicated.
He said the display is having a positive impact on the students.
I think people are in awe. It's like, wow, our people did that? And so I think it's very empowering for our students to see that, our people were there too. And they did a great thing.
Willow Fiddler, APTN National News, Thunder Bay.
A young Enoch runner's trip is in limbo because Canada declined to accept her Inuit beneficiary card for a passport application. For more, we spoke with Tom Fenario. Hi, Tom. Thanks for joining us. What exactly is the holdup here with this passport?
Well, 16-year-old Sarah Agnetuk is from Kujjuarapik, Quebec, and she needed to renew her passport, but she previously had a child's passport. And when you apply for an adult passport in Canada, you need, when you're 16, you need to get an adult passport. You need to have a whole new, there's higher criteria for the ID that you need. So she doesn't have a driver's license yet. She doesn't have a health card with a picture on it. And Citizenship and Immigration Canada, who takes care of the passports, they demand a secondary document, aside from your birth certificate, a secondary document that has a photo ID. So this teenage Inuk girl doesn't have a secondary photo ID, so she sent her Makivik beneficiary card. Now, Makivik is the legal organization that represents Quebec's Inuit. So this is a very valid ID card that they use to get their benefits. For our First Nations viewers, you could say it's equivalent to the Indian status card, if you will.
So, Tom, is there a solution to be found here?
Well, it sounds like Makivik has intervened on behalf of Sarah Agnetuk, and they've spoken to CIC, the abbreviation for Citizen Immigration Canada, and it sounds like they've reached a solution. Finally, in the end, they will accept Sarah Agnetuk's provincial ID, even though it doesn't have a photo. So they've asked her to resubmit, so she doesn't have a passport in hand, but it looks good. This is important because on December 2nd, she's traveling to the Cayman Islands, or wants to travel to the Cayman Islands, with her Runners Club. The Runners Club is an excellent high school program. You can see images over here of where Inuit teenagers run and helps them stay in school, but also choose a healthy lifestyle. So it sounds like all's well will end well, but when it comes to the Makivik idea, no clear answers.
Yeah, so what about future applicants that wish to use the Makivik beneficiary card?
Well, that's the thing. CIC and Makivik Corporation declined to comment regarding the future of the Makivik Corporation beneficiary card. So if you're an adult Inuit wanting to apply for a passport and the only identification you have is a Makivik beneficiary card, you might be out of luck in the near future.
Tom, thanks for joining us and shedding some light on this.
Thanks for having me, Dennis.
A youth delegation from Northwestern Ontario is making their way to the land down under. They'll be attending an Indigenous suicide prevention summit. 6 youth between the ages of 16 and 21 were selected by Anishinaabe Nation. They'll spend 10 days in Australia exchanging cultural knowledge and practices with local Indigenous nations. 20-year-old Erickson Owen from Poplar Hill First Nation is one of the youth going.
What I love most about my community is that we speak our native language. The only time we speak English is when we talk to people who speak English, yeah. That's what I love the most about it. I love seeing the children speaking Ojibwe, and then we teach them at a very young age. Like that's how we pass it on, you know. And then I believe that the language will continue to go strong in the community. Yeah.
That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thanks for joining us. I'm Melissa Ridgen.
And I'm Dennis Ward. Stick around. Face to Face is next. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow for In Focus Live with Melissa. Have a good night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.